He called it love, but what if love was never the truth at all? A respected man, a quiet town, and a young girl whose name would follow him like a shadow, Lolita. Behind polite smiles, closed doors, and carefully chosen words, something dark begins to take shape. This is not a love story. It is the story of a man who convinced himself he was acting out of love while slowly destroying everything around him, and a child who was forced to bear the consequences. The story begins with Humbert, once a boy who believed in innocence and first affection. That innocence fractures during a brief moment in his youth when he encounters someone who leaves a lasting emotional imprint on him. It is fleeting and unclear, something he does not fully understand at the time, but that moment plants a deep psychological wound, one that never truly heals and instead turns into a fixation that follows him into adulthood. Years later, in the quiet town of Ramsdale, Humbert arrives looking for stability. He rents a room in a house owned by Charlotte Hayes, a woman eager for attention and connection. Charlotte immediately notices Humbert, his calm presence, his manners, the sense of sophistication he carries. To her, he represents a chance at something more than loneliness, someone who might finally notice her. But it is Charlotte's teenage daughter, Lolita, who quietly becomes the center of Humbert's thoughts. She is energetic, careless, and unaware of the way she is perceived. In her, Humbert begins projecting memories from his past, emotions he never resolved. What he feels is not love, but a distorted reflection of something long gone, revived in the wrong place, at the wrong time. One afternoon, Humbert sits in the Hayes living room, pretending to read. Lolita is nearby, distracted, casually chewing gum. It is an ordinary, harmless moment, a child passing time, lost in her own world. Yet Humbert's attention keeps drifting back to her, not because of anything she does intentionally, but because of what he chooses to see. He begins to observe small details, everyday gestures that mean nothing on their own. In his mind, these moments take on an exaggerated significance. What should remain ordinary becomes something he fixates on, revealing how far his perspective has already shifted. In that quiet room, nothing outwardly changes, but internally, the line between reality and obsession begins to blur. This is the first quiet moment where Humbert begins to cross a line he knows should not be crossed. Charlotte calls out to her daughter from another room, breaking the silence. As the days pass inside the Hayes household, Charlotte becomes more openly attentive toward Humbert. She lingers in conversations, laughs longer than necessary, and tries to draw his interest with small gestures meant to be charming. Humbert responds with politeness and restraint, but inside he feels deeply unsettled. His discomfort does not come from Charlotte's attention, but from the realization that his thoughts are fixed elsewhere. He knows his focus is not on her, but on her daughter. One evening, Charlotte casually mentions that she plans to send Lolita away to boarding school. She speaks lightly, almost cheerfully, imagining a quieter home and perhaps a closer connection with Humbert. For him, the news lands like a shock. He feels a sudden sense of panic he cannot justify. The day arrives when Lolita must leave for boarding school. Humbert watches from a distance, weighed down by emotions he struggles to control. Fear, fixation, and helplessness collide inside him. Lolita glances back briefly, her expression playful and unaware. Their eyes meet for a moment before she runs across the lawn, full of energy and freedom, untouched by the thoughts forming in his mind. Humbert remains still, torn between a desire to hold on to control and the reality that she is moving beyond his reach. A few days after Lolita's departure, Humbert receives a letter from her. His hands shake as he opens it. On the surface, the letter is harmless, filled with simple observations about school life and her daily routine. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming on its own. But when Charlotte later comes across the correspondence, curiosity leads her to read it. As she does, she begins to sense something unsettling, not in Lolita's words, but in Humbert's responses. The tone, the intensity, the emotional weight behind them signals that something beneath the surface is deeply wrong. The letters, which once appeared harmless, now begin to reflect something far more troubling. They expose Humbert's growing fixation and reveal the unstable emotional ground beneath what had seemed like an ordinary household. Tension builds inside the Hayes home. Charlotte, increasingly uneasy and frustrated, reaches a breaking point. Her suspicions boil over, and she confronts Humbert in anger, announcing that she is done. She tells him she is leaving, that he can keep the house, that she no longer cares. Humbert is caught off guard. He struggles to hide the truth of what has been unfolding inside his mind. He responds calmly, carefully choosing his words, presenting himself as reasonable and harmless. In a final effort to calm things down, he offers to make Charlotte a drink, hoping the tension will pass. But when he returns, Charlotte is gone. Panic grips him as he searches the house. Then he notices the open door, the empty road beyond it. In a sudden and devastating moment, everything changes. A vehicle passes. Tragedy strikes. Humbert stands frozen, unable to react, overwhelmed by shock and disbelief. The argument, the manipulation, the attempt to manage the situation all become meaningless in the face of what has happened. The house that once was filled with quiet tension and unspoken conflict is now overshadowed by loss and death. This moment reshapes everything. It becomes a psychological burden that will follow him for the rest of the story, shaping every decision that comes next. After Charlotte's death, the house falls into an unsettling silence. Yet even in the midst of chaos and grief, Humbert's thoughts drift immediately to Lolita. He acts quickly, traveling to the boarding school where she is staying. His movements are urgent but controlled, his mind racing with justification and fear. This is no ordinary journey for him. It marks a dangerous step further into moral collapse. As he approaches the school, Humbert forces himself to appear calm, convincing himself that his actions are reasonable. This moment marks the beginning of a journey that will test morality, freedom, and responsibility. Humbert convinces himself that he is guiding her, that he knows what is best. As the car moves along a quiet highway, the world outside feels distant. Long stretches of road pass by. Motels, empty landscapes, and silence fill the space between them. Lolita sits beside him, distracted, turning the radio dial without concern, unaware of what is about to change her life. Humbert glances at her, noticing her light-hearted energy, the ease with which she exists in the moment. He hesitates. The air grows heavy. Finally, he speaks, his voice low and controlled. He tells her that her mother is gone. The words hang between them. Lolita freezes. Her expression shifts as the meaning sinks in. Confusion turns to shock. She struggles to process what she has just heard. For a moment, everything stops. Humbert responds with practiced sympathy, presenting himself as calm and supportive. He appears to share her grief, offering comfort through words and gestures that seem reassuring. But beneath that surface, his thoughts are already racing. He understands what this loss means. Lolita now has no familiar place to return to, no immediate protector. The weight of that realization settles heavily over both of them. Days pass, then weeks. Mile after mile, Humbert and Lolita move across the country. Small towns blurred together. Neon motel signs flicker through the night. Each morning, they leave one temporary place behind and move on to the next. To strangers, they appear ordinary, like a guardian traveling with a child. Nothing about them draws attention. But over time, subtle changes begin to appear. Lolita grows quieter. Her laughter becomes rare. The energy that once defined her fades behind guarded expressions. Humbert tries to distract her with outings, small treats, and constant movement. Yet the journey loses its sense of innocence. The world inside that car slowly begins to feel like confinement. At night, Humbert writes in his journal, reshaping reality into something more acceptable to himself. He labels the journey as meaningful, even romantic, convincing himself that the connection he imagines is mutual. But nearby, Lolita lies awake, turned away, staring at the ceiling.
She drifts between fear and emotional numbness, unable to fully process what her life has become. At a roadside gas station, Humbert steps out to stretch and buys a new pair of sunglasses. He adjusts them carefully, studying his reflection, trying to look composed, ordinary. When he turns back, he notices Lolita laughing briefly with a young station attendant. It is a harmless interaction, a few words exchanged, a shared smile, but in Humbert's mind it shifts instantly. He watches too closely. His thoughts twist the moment into something threatening, reading meaning where there is none. As they drive away, the attendant waves goodbye. Humbert keeps watching through the rearview mirror. A car pulls onto the road behind them. He becomes convinced it is following them. Hours later, they stop at a small motel. Lolita appears calm, even cheerful, acting as though everything is normal. But Humbert's unease has grown into full suspicion. He keeps checking the window, scanning the road outside. Late that night, he steps out briefly for air. When he returns, he notices a familiar car parked nearby. His thoughts spiral. Panic replaces reason. He shakes Lolita awake, his voice unsteady, demanding answers. She looks at him, disoriented and frightened, unsure of what he is talking about. Her silence only deepens his fear. In his mind, every shadow becomes a threat, every stranger a rival. This night marks a turning point. By morning, Lolita looks exhausted and weak. She complains of pain and says she cannot continue traveling. Humbert, uneasy but concerned, drives her to a small-town hospital. Inside, a nurse leads Lolita away for examination. Humbert is left alone in the lobby, pacing back and forth. When the nurse returns, she tells him that Lolita needs rest and that he should come back the next day. Early the following morning, Humbert calls the hospital. The nurse hesitates before responding. The young girl? She isn't here anymore. A man came for her. He said he was her uncle. He paid in cash. The words hit Humbert all at once. His body goes still. His throat tightens. Questions rush in, but there are no answers. The nurse explains that the man had proper documents. Everything appeared legitimate. She doesn't remember his face. Humbert drops the phone. The fear he had tried to suppress now feels undeniable. The stranger, the car, the sense of being watched. It was real. Lolita is gone. He rushes to the hospital, demanding explanations, searching room after room, but it's too late. The bed is empty. The room feels lifeless. Her belongings are gone. For the first time, Humbert is completely alone, not just without Lolita, but without control, without direction. Days blur into weeks. Humbert drives endlessly, passing through towns, motels, and highways, chasing nothing but memories. Every unfamiliar face feels significant. Every shadow seems meaningful. His thoughts return again and again to the unknown man, the one he believes had been following them all along. Years later, Humbert follows an address he once received to a quiet, unremarkable town. When the door opens, time seems to stop. Lolita stands before him, no longer a child, but an adult shaped by experience and exhaustion. She is expecting a child of her own, a sign that her life has moved forward, away from the chaos that once defined it. They stand in silence. There is no anger, no confrontation, only the weight of everything that cannot be undone. Lolita speaks calmly, explaining how the man who took her promised freedom but offered only another form of control. She tells him how she escaped, how she rebuilt her life piece by piece. Humbert listens, drained. The truth hurts more than jealousy ever could. Before he leaves, he asks a question he has avoided his entire life. Does she feel anything for him? She answers honestly, she never did. Humbert accepts this quietly. For the first time, he faces a truth he has always refused to see. Later, Humbert confronts the man responsible, Claire Quilty. The encounter is tense and chaotic. Another man who crossed moral boundaries and left damage behind. When it is over, Humbert turns himself in. He is arrested soon after, calm in a way he has never been before. His final written words from prison are not about passion or justification, but about loss, about a child he never truly understood, about a name that never belonged to him. In the end, Humbert was not a romantic figure. He was a man consumed by his own delusions, and Lolita was never a fantasy. She was a child whose life was shaped by someone who confused possession with care. If this breakdown made you reflect, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to Cinebreaks, where we explore cinema's most unsettling stories and the lasting questions they leave behind.